So y'all know about some sad shootings that have happened recently, and now the topic of like teachers having guns is now prevalent. And
And of course, we're a very politically active school, so we have students here that are curious what our staff thinks if teachers or staff should be able to carry guns.
yeah, and I think this is a really good topic or good time that students went around asking teachers this question, because some schools are really thinking about it, and I think that our school is the one that's not like going to take this matter into our own hands. And
I think a lot of places actually like aren't actually super for it, especially in the northern states. But I know that gun safety is a prevalent issue, and we actually a lot of people there's a national walkout on March 14th.
that a lot of our students and staffers are going to be a part of, and I think it's going to be something that we should really like a good I don't know memory.
It's a good thing for the youth to unite and try to make a change over. So next up, we have our segment, teachers talking about whether staff should be able to carry guns. Let's check that out.
Hi, my name is Natalie DeCook. I'm a senior here at Norristown Area High School, and team and I recently went around asking the faculty how they would feel if the staff were asked to carry guns in school to protect their students. These are their opinions.
Our team took on this project in light of the recent school shootings. Florida, you voiced your opinion, and you inspired us to voice our opinion too.
I'm not in favor of being asked to carry a gun. I don't want to have the power of life or death over someone else, and I'm just not a fan of guns.
I would not carry a gun. I am against teachers carrying guns.
If I was asked to have a gun in school, I think I would decline. Not because I don't want having someone here armed to protect us. I would prefer having someone who's a professional.
I would not feel comfortable or trained with a firearm, so I don't feel like I'm the best person to be carrying a firearm around to protect people. Though I would protect my students, a firearm wouldn't be the best way to do it.
Personally, if I were asked to be one of the teachers that would be armed in the school, I don't think personally I would feel comfortable with it. It's not something that really matches my personality per se, or something that I would really want to be responsible for.
I think asking teachers to be armed in schools sets up a really dangerous scenario.
So I'm wildly uncomfortable with being asked to have a gun on my person in school or to even use it. I'm sort of against that kind of violence.
I do not feel comfortable in the slightest bit having a firearm on my person in the school building. I don't think anybody other than a police officer should have that right.
I would feel very uncomfortable if I was asked to carry a weapon in order to protect my students. I think that teachers should not carry weapons, and other methods could be found to secure the safety of our students.
Literally, my only answer is no. I don't need an excuse.
If I was asked by the school district to carry a gun, I would politely say no, because I don't believe, for me, guns is the answer.
Teachers shouldn't carry guns in a school. Officer Shepard should be the one carrying the guns. And if you have security like me who are qualified, that might be ex-police officers, you can train them to carry a gun.
If someone asked me to carry a gun to protect my students, I would absolutely refuse. I think it is a ridiculous notion to think that it protects kids for teachers to have firearms in school. We are trained to be mentors and to teach and to help kids figure out ways to solve conflict without violence. And I think it sends the wrong message to have teachers be armed.
I myself am not a proponent of teachers carrying guns in schools. I think that it brings up many safety concerns when teachers are allowed to carry guns. I'm not going to get into that. I think a better idea would be to have administrators or have safes throughout the building that certain individuals have access to in the event of an emergency. But I am not a proponent of teachers carrying guns on their hips.
I feel that I wouldn't be the person to carry the gun to protect the students. My focus is on the healthcare, safety, and first aid in a situation like that.
I would refuse to be the chosen person to carry a gun because of my personal belief.
The negatives, if I have a sub, am I supposed to leave my gun with my sub? What if something happens and a kid gets the gun, even if it's locked up, Am I responsible for that? What if an accident happens, am I responsible or is the district responsible? I think there are too many questions, and I don't think it's safe for guns to be in schools.
I'm not a pro-gun person myself. I'd like to leave that in hand of someone who's security or an SRO who's able to handle the gun. I'd prefer to come in and spend my time and all my energy teaching. But that doesn't mean I'm opposed to having protection here in school. I'd just rather have an armed professional do that.
I don't see any positives to teachers carrying guns. We're supposed to teach children how to handle things without violence and without reacting to things.
The advantages would be it may deter someone from coming in trying to hurt individuals in the school. The disadvantages, you may have accidents. You might have someone who uses it incorrectly. So those are your advantages and disadvantages.
I think the most important thing for us to realize when we look at a negative of teachers carrying guns in school is the idea that we may in fact be attacking the wrong problem. The reason people shoot each other is because we've forgotten that we are all humans of the same race and species, and we've begun to lose our sense of empathy for one another. And the distance of a weapon, especially a gun, ultimately increases that sense of disconnection from someone in an act of violence.
Yeah, in theory, sounds like it would be a good idea to stop something that was happening, but in my head, I couldn't wrap my head around how that would actually be applied. I think there would be too many variables and too many instances of something that could go wrong. So as much as I would love if a situation came about that it could be stopped quickly, and if there were people that are actually able to do that, and I do believe that there would be people who would be able to do that professionally and responsibly, but if anything with human nature, there's always something or someone in that variable I talked about that will prevent the proper application of that idea to be successfully implemented.
So the negatives of having weapons, or teachers having weapons in schools, would be lack of training. I don't feel that the training that would be provided would be optimal.
It is scary for the kids to think about what could possibly happen if there were other adults in the building that have those firearms. It's also scary for our law enforcement to think about the liability of having other people with firearms potentially doing damage that they cannot control. It's scary for the law enforcement that come into the building who have no clue who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, because they just won't be able to tell.
I believe a disadvantage for teachers carrying weapons in order to protect students is that we are not properly trained in order to do so, and could actually cause more problems. There are school resource officers, and those that are allowed to carry, that would be more advantageous than teachers.
The disadvantage in a building like this, there's so many doors, so many entrance locations. The disadvantage would be, where will the qualified people be, and how would they get directed to where the incident is?
I think the advantages of some teachers holding a gun would be they could maybe stop intruders, stuff like that. But the disadvantage of not, maybe like me that don't have a gun, is to protect myself and my students.
I see absolutely no benefit to having teachers be armed. I see only negative, and that it could result in more harm and death and school shootings.
And it's scary for the teachers. I personally would be nervous, and it's not as though I have never shot a firearm before, but I've shot at paper targets, and it's very different than being in a high-stakes situation where you have to fire at an actual human being, probably somebody who you already know. And I just do not feel comfortable doing that, and I don't feel comfortable being around other people who will have that on their person.
We have seen in the past that people who are armed tend to maybe sometimes react without thinking.
Several years ago, there was a shooting incident in a theater in a little town called Aurora, Colorado, and the police analyzed the incident, and they said this, that if there had been somebody in the audience who had been firing back at the shooter, that it would have at least doubled the number of casualties. And I also am informed on this issue by the fact that the police who train constantly for combat situations, when they actually get into an armed combat situation, 75 to 80% of the rounds they fire miss the target. Let's think about that for a second. These are people who wanted to go into law enforcement and who train constantly, and 75 to 80% of the shots they fire miss the assailant that they're trying to take out of the picture. Now you take that situation into the schoolhouse and you have a recipe for disaster.
But understand that maybe we need some kind of control in the schools in case of a shooter. I would hope that that could be attained in other ways rather than arming personnel in the school.
You can't just give someone a gun to protect the students without being qualified and covered under the law.
And so we should be fostering ways, as opposed to weapons, to engage students in empathy and care and compassion. We should get out of our small boxes where we want to try and protect ourselves from one another and think in a more sense of us as a community that needs to embrace each other to prevent us from hating enough to need to use a weapon.
I don't buy it. I don't think that it's a workable strategy. I would not want to be a part of it.
Nothing good will come of having extra teachers with firearms in the building.
You just listened to what our staff thought of this issue, and now we want to hear what you think in the comments down below.